Hey Raz Man, how's it going? I just wanted to do a quick intro before the intro here because I've actually had this upcoming episode filmed for a couple of months, but I had to wait for Jack Civilian Snowman to post his first because he let off last year and I didn't want to mess up the flow. So his is up, now I can put mine up. But the reason I wanted to do another quick little intro is just to say that he and I have very, very similar things to say about two of the films on both our list. So I just wanted to reiterate by throwing the same outfit on and doing this little intro that it's purely coincidental. Jack and I just have a lot in common. Our tastes are extremely similar, and it just so happened that we had to almost echo each other with two of the films on this list. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is that I haven't got very many questions for the Q&A, so I'm a little bit confused because I thought that's what all of you wanted. If it's what all of you wanted, I need more questions posted in that video that says post your questions for the 1,000 subscriber Q&A. If you guys want something else, let me know and we'll do something else as a thank you. And then I'll just answer those questions on their own just for the sake of doing a video. So now on to today's episode. Hey Raz Man, how you doing? Well, it's that time of year for one of my favorite episodes to do since Jack Civilian Snowman started the tradition last year, and then I asked him if I could do a video response to it. He said go for it, and now we've decided to make it a yearly thing. It's time to talk about my top 10 films of 2010 today on the Raz Man's Reality. Alright, before I get started, like I said, this is all Jack Civilian Snowman. He's the one that came up with this concept, and everybody knows how I feel about Jack by now. He's one of my very best friends. There's nothing in the world I wouldn't do for the guy. So if by some miracle you're subscribed to me and not subscribed to the Civilian Snowman, there's his link right there in overlay on your screen. Clickable version down below in the description box. Go and check out Jack's channel. Now, I need to also mention that if you hear any background noise, my mom is taking a shower. So, the first half of this list I actually don't own, but that's not to say that I wouldn't gladly own any of them, because I would. But the first half will have to just be overlay photos because I don't own them, and then of course I'll show the physical disc for the top half. Okay, coming in at number 10, we have the film that actually won Best Picture at this year's Oscars, The King's Speech. Now, I don't have a problem with The King's Speech at all, but to me there were so many better films this year, and I don't understand why King's Speech won Best Picture. Yeah, it had some great acting. It's a great story, even though it's kind of like the normal Shakespearean love story type atmosphere that we've seen 1,000 times. To me, and the acting is what set it apart. It's still a great film, but to me it's absolutely not the best picture of the year. And again, everybody's opinion is different, but I'm not even talking about the difference between your favorite films and films that are Oscar-worthy films. I'm just talking about there were better films overall this year, or last year. In my opinion, 2010 was one of the better years in recent memory for films, and I just don't understand why the Academy thought that The King's Speech was best. But that's my opinion. Next up on my list at number 9, we have 127 Hours. Everybody knows that this film was based on a true story, so I don't have to talk too much about it. But the thing that really surprised me about the film and why it made this list is James Franco's acting ability in the film. He really just took his skills to a whole other level, in my opinion, with the performance in 127 Hours. And the direction in the film, the cinematography in the film, everything about the film. Even though you knew what the ending of this film was going into it, it didn't take away from how great a film it was. And that is why it's on my top 10 list, and that's why I highly recommend it. 127 Hours, if you haven't seen it, see it, it's a great film. Coming in at number 8, I have True Grit, the Coen Brothers remake of the Clint Eastwood, Western. And I was really surprised that this film ended up making my top 10 list. I mean, I went into it knowing that it was going to be a great film because I love Jeff Bridges and I love everything he does on screen. But my problem is, my personal hang-up is that I'm not a fan of Westerns. Never have been, never will be. The only quote-unquote Western that I really love is Back to the Future Part 3. And the genre for me just doesn't hold my attention. There are some great films in the Western genre that I've loved over the years. The Man with No Name trilogy jumps right to the head of that class, but I'm just not a big fan of the genre of it. This film was different. Everyone in this film just gave a phenomenal performance, and I forgot that I was watching a Western, which is why I can put it on my list. I just loved it. And the Coen Brothers are back. This is the best thing they've done since No Country for Old Men. Coming in at number 7 is Black Swan. Everyone knows the story of this film by now. I don't have to give it away. Natalie Portman, this is one of the most well-deserved Best Actress Academy Award winning performances that there's been in many years. If you haven't seen Black Swan, see it. It's a complete mind trip. You'll leave it and you wonder how in the world you ever got away with not having an experience like this in film before. It's indescribable, really, the feeling that you get when you see Black Swan. If you haven't seen it, see it. Coming in at number 6 is a film that is a lot of people's number 1 for 2010, but it's my number 6, but that doesn't lessen the impact of it. And of course I'm talking about David Fincher's The Social Network. I, like so many others, when I heard about this film, I thought, how can they make a film about the creation of Facebook interesting? But how you do it is you attach David Fincher and Aaron Sorkin to it, and you have 2 amazing performances as lead characters. You have great side performances from Justin Timberlake. It's just a tremendous film. It's a dizzying film, and it's the only film that nothing but talking that was ever this good, in my opinion. So yeah, The Social Network, tremendous film, comes in at number 6. At number 5, it's Mark Wahlberg and Kristen Bale in The Fire. This to me, the biggest compliment I can give it, I haven't been able to do my full review yet. I will be posting that probably sometime in June. But the best compliment that I can give this film, without talking too much about it, because I do want to do a full review of it, is that this film is another Raging Bull. It's a true story. It's a boxing film, but it's the truest way of doing a film. It is a filmmaker's film. It is great performances. It is great ability to suck you in to the story. There's nothing about this film that doesn't work. And that's the exact same thing that you say when you think about Martin Scorsese's Raging Bull. So this film, from a sports standpoint, is another Raging Bull. Just an amazing, amazing experience. If you haven't seen The Fighter, do yourself a favor, check it out right now. Number 4 is Inception. Now, even though this was filmed by my favorite Hollywood director these days, Christopher Nolan, like I said in my review, I went into this and I wasn't that impressed with the concept. I didn't think that this was necessarily something that would be entertaining or work on film. It just didn't gravitate me the way that a Christopher Nolan film should. But I learned that you should never doubt Christopher Nolan, because he took one of the most boring concepts to me ever for a film on paper and made it work, and made it be something that is the most unique experience that you've ever seen on film. That is the only thing I can say about Inception, and I think I've already said it before. It's just the most unique experience that I've ever seen in a film, and it works. Inception is just brilliant. See it. Now, if we were to be discussing these next films in any year but 2010, they would have been number 2 and number 1 respectively. But because they came out in 2010, they had to be number 3 and number 2 on the list made by me, and they were very, very close together. I could have really flipped either one of these around, except when I really thought about it, I realized that one of them is now one of my favorite movies of all time, just like I said in the Robbie Webster contest entry video a while back, so that's why it went ahead of the other. But coming up first at number 3, we have Kick-Ass. You guys remember The Wheel Warrior, don't you? Yeah, I had a lot of fun with that. I always loved the concept of Kick-Ass, for the same reason that I love the concept of The Watchmen and The Incredibles. The idea of an everyman or real-life people becoming superheroes always intrigued me. But the difference between Watchmen and The Incredibles, Watchmen and The Incredibles and this, is that in both The Watchmen and The Incredibles, it is about a world where people know that superheroes exist, and you see what it would be like for those superheroes to have to overcome villains around every corner, because if people know superheroes exist, then people know villains exist. In the case of Kick-Ass, however, it is about a geek who decides that why hasn't anyone ever tried to be a superhero? Peter Parker was a normal guy. Bruce Wayne was a normal guy. And he then subsequently inspires many, many people to follow in his footsteps. So it's about our world if people decided that they wanted to be superheroes without superpowers. And that's all that I really want to say about it, because I do want to do a review on this coming up soon as well. But everything about this film works. The acting, the premise, even the violence. While it was extreme and breathtaking in a bad way sometimes, it all works. None of it seems like it's excessive or too much. So yeah, if you haven't seen Kick-Ass, it is amazing. You won't regret seeing it one bit. Which leads me into my next film. Now, if Kick-Ass is the sort of gritty, real-life equivalent of a comic book film, like what would happen in real life if people started acting like comic book characters, then this next film is its polar opposite, because it takes the fantasy portion of the comic book world and the video game world, but at the same time, it is what people will look at when they talk about growing up in the 90s and the 2000s, when people look back on film retrospectives, in my opinion. And of course, I'm talking about, at number 2, Edgar Wright's Scott Pilgrim versus the World. And sorry for the dog in the background. The little kids in the apartment complex are playing outside on a little playground, so he's barking at them. Scott Pilgrim versus the World, as I just stated, to me is pretty much a time capsule. It is what I think about when I think about being a teenager in the 90s. Everything that I loved as a teenager in the 90s, and I loved about being a quote-unquote 90s kid. Even though I was born in 1979, even though I lived through the 80s, the 90s are the decade that I remember. And this film, while it has some elements of the 2000s in it as well, to me is my life story. Because Scott Pilgrim is a tremendous geek, and he always struggles to get the girl, and the only thing he knows about surviving are skills they learned in video games. And just like almost everything else that I put on this list, with the exception of what's coming up next at number 1, I'm not going to say too much more about it because I want to do a full review on this. And actually, Scott Pilgrim, if things go as planned, will be very, very special. So you definitely want to look forward to that. But yeah, Scott Pilgrim, can't recommend it enough. In any other year on the planet, as I said before, this would have been my number 1. But it's 2010. And what came out in 2010? But the first part of the conclusion of the greatest fantasy series of all time, and my number 1 obsession. Of course, I'm talking about Harry Potter, and the first film in the splitting of the 7-part saga into 2 films due to length, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. It is the true definition of truly personal taste and reasoning for me to place this film above Scott Pilgrim, because the Harry Potter franchise is just the most near and dear thing to my heart, other than Batman and anything to do with that character. And what stands out about this film, as I said in my film review and my Blu-ray review as well, is that it is the most accurate interpretation of any Harry Potter film to date. And even with the extra added elements that every director is inevitably going to throw into any book adaptation, because you're adapting genre to genre, the ones that David Yates made in this film, even more so than Order of the Phoenix and Half-Blood Prince, which were very good as well, the ones that he made in this film are ones that work. They're ones that felt like they should have been part of the story to begin with, and they don't take away from the film. There's just absolutely nothing bad I can say about Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. And as a Harry Potter fan, any year when a Harry Potter film comes out, this film reached every single one of my expectations, and it exceeded them. And that is why Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 is my number one film of 2010. Hope you all enjoyed this episode, and I'm sure Jack would join me in the sentiment of saying that if any one of you out there would like to chime in with a list of your own, please feel free to do so. This is reality according to the Raz Man. And Raz Man style, it's not just a catchphrase, but a way of life.